He stands in the brightest rooms on earth, surrounded by lights, applause, screens flashing numbers so large they stop meaning anything, and yet there is a quiet absence that follows him like a shadow. Once, the smile came easily. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't polished, but it was alive. It carried curiosity, mischief, a sense of wonder that said he believed tomorrow could be bent, reshaped, challenged. Now, when the smile appears, it feels borrowed, as if it arrives late and leaves early, as if it is performing a duty rather than expressing a truth. People see the face, but few notice the pause behind the eyes, the moment where something seems to hesitate, to retreat. Elon Musk has always lived in extremes. Extreme ambition, extreme pressure, extreme risk. From the outside, it looks like triumph stacked on triumph, a life built from headlines and history-making decisions. Rockets landing themselves back on Earth, electric cars rewriting an industry, satellites stitching the sky together with invisible threads of data. Yet hearts do not measure success the way markets do. A heart does not care how many companies you lead or how many barriers you break. It only knows what it has lost, what it longs for, what it can no longer reach. There is a particular kind of loneliness that comes with being constantly watched. Every gesture analyzed, every word magnified, every silence questioned. When you are admired by millions, it becomes dangerously easy to believe you are understood by none. The world projects its fantasies onto you: genius, villain, savior, madman. Very few pause to imagine the simple, human ache that can exist beneath all of that. The ache of wanting to be seen without being studied. The ache of wanting connection without condition. The smile, once spontaneous, now seems cautious. It flickers in interviews, on stages, in photos taken at carefully chosen angles. It is there, but it does not fully arrive. As if something inside him is holding back, protecting itself from another fracture. Because when a heart has been broken, it learns new reflexes. It learns how to shield itself, how to remain functional while quietly bleeding. It learns how to keep moving forward even when joy no longer leads the way. He speaks often about the future of humanity, about survival, expansion, the necessity of becoming a multi-planet species. These are grand visions, and they are sincere. But sometimes, buried between the lines, there is another story being told. A story about fragility. About how even the most powerful minds cannot engineer their way out of emotional loss. You can design rockets that escape gravity, but you cannot always escape the gravity of memory. The absence of the smile is not a sudden event. It did not vanish overnight. It faded gradually, worn down by years of relentless demand and private disappointment. Relationships strained under the weight of impossible schedules. Love competing with obsession. Presence sacrificed at the altar of progress. Even the strongest bonds can crack when time becomes the rarest resource of all. And when they do, the break is often silent, invisible to those applauding from afar. There is a myth that visionaries are immune to heartbreak, that their minds are so focused on the future that the present cannot wound them. But visionaries feel deeply precisely because they imagine so vividly. When they love with intensity. When they lose, the loss echoes through every layer of their being. The same imagination that can picture cities on Mars can also replay a single moment of regret again and again. Searching for an alternate outcome that no longer exists, in moments of candor, he has hinted at exhaustion, at emotional strain, at the cost of carrying so much responsibility. These are not complaints, they are glimpses. Small cracks in a carefully maintained exterior. And through those cracks, something tender can be seen. A man who has given almost everything to his work, sometimes at the expense of the very things that give work its meaning, the smile is gone not because he has failed, but because he has felt. It is gone because life has demanded more than strategy and intelligence. It has demanded vulnerability. It has demanded sacrifice. It has demanded choices that cannot be optimized by algorithms or spreadsheets. And some of those choices leave marks that no amount of success can erase. People often mistake intensity for coldness. They see the sharp words, the blunt statements, the restless energy, and assume there is no softness underneath. But the absence of a smile often points to the opposite. It suggests that something mattered deeply enough to hurt. That something was loved enough to be missed. A broken heart does not belong to someone who never cared, it belongs to someone who cared too much. There are moments when he laughs, truly laughs, and for a second the old light returns. It is brief, but unmistakable. In those moments, you can sense that the capacity for joy has not disappeared. It has simply been buried under layers of responsibility, disappointment, and guardedness. Like a muscle that has not been used freely in a long time, it exists, but it is cautious, stiff, unsure if it is safe to fully extend again. The world often asks him to be more productive, more visionary, more decisive. Rarely does it ask him to simply be. To rest without guilt. To feel without scrutiny. To grieve without commentary. A broken heart needs space, but space is the one thing his life rarely allows. The calendar fills itself. The demands do not pause. The next crisis always arrives before the last wound has healed, and so the smile remains absent, not as a sign of defeat, but as a sign of ongoing struggle. A sign that behind the myth, behind the brand, behind the constant forward motion, there is a human being navigating the same emotional terrain as everyone else, only without the luxury of privacy. His heartbreak is not a spectacle, even if the world tries to turn it into one. It is a quiet companion, walking beside him through boardrooms and launch pads, reminding him of what cannot be controlled. Perhaps one day the smile will return more fully. Not the naive smile of someone untouched by loss, but a deeper one, shaped by experience, carrying both sorrow and acceptance. A smile that knows what it has endured and chooses to rise anyway. Until then, the absence itself tells a story worth listening to. A story about the cost of greatness, the vulnerability of ambition, and the undeniable truth that no matter how high you aim, the heart remains profoundly human. As the days move forward, the rhythm of his life never truly slows. Meetings blur into launches, launches into interviews, interviews into late-night messages typed with fingers that should have been resting hours ago. From the outside, it looks like momentum. From the inside, it feels like running because stopping would mean listening too closely to what the silence might say. When the world goes quiet, that is when the heart speaks the loudest, and not every voice is easy to hear. There is something haunting about watching someone who once radiated unfiltered enthusiasm now measure every expression. It's not calculation for strategy alone, it's caution born from experience. A broken heart teaches restraint. It teaches you that giving too much, too freely, can cost more than you imagined. So you learn to ration your emotions the same way you ration your time, allocating them only where you believe they will not be wasted. Elon Musk has always believed in building what others call impossible. Yet there are things no amount of brilliance can rebuild once they collapse. Trust, once fractured, never quite returns to its original shape. Love, once lost, leaves an outline that nothing else fits perfectly into. Even when new connections form, they often do so around the absence, not in place of it. The heart adapts, but it remembers. Sometimes the sadness shows not in words, but in the way he stares off camera. As if his thoughts have drifted somewhere far from the conversation at hand. There is a distance there, a subtle detachment, like someone watching life through glass. Present, engaged, but not fully inside the moment. That distance is not arrogance, it is protection. It is the mind stepping in where the heart has grown tired of hurting. He jokes, often darkly, often self-deprecatingly. Humor becomes armor. When you can laugh at yourself, you take control of the narrative before anyone else can wound you with it. But humor, too, can hide fatigue. It can mask the ache of carrying expectations that never sleep. The ache of being needed constantly while feeling emotionally untethered. For someone who thinks in terms of centuries and civilizations, it is ironic how intensely personal loss can feel. A single relationship, a single goodbye, can weigh more heavily than global criticism or financial risk. Because those things threaten projects. Heartbreak threatens identity. It forces questions that even the sharpest minds struggle to answer. Who am I without this connection? What part of me did I give away that I can't seem to get back? He has spoken before about loneliness, about how success does not shield you from it. In some ways, it amplifies it. The higher you climb, the fewer people can walk beside you without imbalance. Power creates distance, even when it is unintentional. People approach you with expectations, agendas, projections. Genuine intimacy becomes rare, and when you find it, the stakes feel terrifyingly high. Losing it feels catastrophic. The smile being gone is not the absence of hope, it is the presence of realism. It is the expression of someone who has seen both the heights of possibility and the depths of personal cost. Someone who understands that progress often demands sacrifices that are never listed in annual reports. Sacrifices measured in missed moments, strained bonds, conversations that never happened when they should have. There are nights, undoubtedly, when the weight of it all presses harder than usual. When the mind, so adept at solving external problems, turns inward and finds no clean solution. When memories surface uninvited, not as dramatic scenes, but as small details, a tone of voice, a shared silence, a look that once meant safety. Those are the moments when the absence of the smile feels most real, most personal, and yet, even in this brokenness, there is movement. He does not stop building. He does not retreat entirely. That persistence is not denial, it is survival. Creation becomes a way to keep going when healing feels incomplete. Each new project carries a fragment of hope, a belief that something meaningful can still emerge from pain. That forward motion is not empty ambition, it is an act of faith, however quiet. What many fail to understand is that a broken heart does not erase the ability to love again. It reshapes it. It makes it slower, more deliberate, more cautious. The next smile, when it comes, will not be careless. It will have passed through fire. It will know what it risks. And that knowledge will make it both fragile and profound. Until that day, the world will continue to speculate, to judge, to interpret every expression as a statement. But the truth remains simpler and more human than any narrative. The smile is gone because something mattered deeply enough to leave a mark. And the man behind the myth continues forward, carrying both his vision for the future and the quiet weight of a heart still finding its way back to wholeness. There is a particular silence that settles in after loss, one that does not shout or demand attention, but lingers in the background of everything. It becomes the hum beneath the engine, the low frequency you only notice when you finally pause. For someone like Elon Musk, pausing is rare, almost dangerous. Still, that silence finds him in unexpected places, between flights, in the early hours before dawn, in the brief moment after a crowd disperses and the applause fades, in those quiet spaces, the mind that can calculate trajectories and timelines turns inward. It revisits decisions, not with the arrogance of certainty, but with the humility of hindsight. What if I had stayed longer? What if I had listened instead of solving? What if I had chosen differently? Even once? These questions have no utility, no clear output, and yet they persist. Because the heart is not interested in efficiency. It is interested in meaning. The world often frames him as relentless, even ruthless. But relentlessness can be a refuge. When you are always pushing forward, you do not have to sit with what is behind you. Progress becomes a form of anesthesia. Not because the pain is gone, but because it is temporarily outpaced. Yet pain has endurance. It waits. And when it catches up, it does so quietly, without spectacle. There are people who say the smile is gone because fame hardens a person. But that is too simple. Fame does not harden, it exposes. It removes the illusion that external validation can substitute for internal peace. When millions admire you, but one voice you care about is absent, the imbalance becomes impossible to ignore. Applause cannot replace intimacy. Recognition cannot replace belonging. He still believes in humanity, in its potential to overcome its worst instincts. That belief is woven into everything he builds. But belief does not protect you from disappointment. In fact, it makes disappointment sharper. When you expect better, from systems, from people, from yourself, the gap between hope and reality can hurt deeply. A broken heart often belongs to someone who believed fiercely. The absence of the smile is also an expression of grief for time. Time that cannot be recovered. Moments that slipped through the cracks of ambition. Birthdays missed, conversations postponed, emotional debts accumulated with the promise of repayment later. Later, as it turns out, is not guaranteed. When that realization arrives, it brings a sobering clarity that no success can soften. yet there is also growth in this brokenness, though it rarely announces itself. Growth looks like restraint where there was once impulsiveness. It looks like moments of reflection where there was once only acceleration. It looks like understanding that some problems cannot be solved by working harder. They require a different kind of attention, one that does not come naturally to someone trained to optimize everything. You can see it in the way he speaks now. More measured, more aware of consequences beyond the immediate. Not always gentler, but more intentional. Pain has a way of refining focus. It strips away illusions of invincibility. It reminds even the most powerful individuals that they, too, are subject to the same emotional laws as everyone else. The smile being gone is not permanent. It is in transition. Between what was and what might be. Between innocence and wisdom. Between the version of himself that believed love could wait and the version that understands love demands presence. That transition is uncomfortable, often invisible, and deeply personal. There are those who quietly hope he will fail, who interpret the absence of joy as a sign of collapse. But broken hearts do not always lead to broken lives. Sometimes they lead to more honest ones. Lives that acknowledge limits. Lives that recognize the cost of constant striving. Lives that begin, slowly, to make room for healing alongside ambition. He is not finished. Not with his work, not with his growth, not with his capacity to feel. The heart, even when cracked, continues to beat. It continues to hope, even if it does so cautiously. And one day, perhaps in a moment no camera captures, the smile will return, not because everything is perfect, but because something inside has made peace with imperfection. Until then, the absence itself speaks. It tells a story of depth rather than emptiness. Of loss rather than indifference. Of a man still walking forward, carrying both the weight of his dreams and the quiet truth that even the most extraordinary journeys are shaped by very ordinary human pain. As time stretches on, the brokenness settles into something more complex than raw pain. It becomes a companion rather than a wound, something carried rather than fought. For someone like Elon Musk, whose life has always been about resistance, against gravity, against limits, against disbelief, this kind of acceptance does not come easily. Yet slowly, almost unwillingly, it arrives. Not as surrender, but as understanding. There is a difference between being driven by hope and being driven by necessity. In earlier years, hope burned brightly. The belief that if he pushed hard enough, moved fast enough, loved intensely enough, everything would eventually align. Now, necessity takes the lead. The work continues not because it promises fulfillment, but because stopping would feel like erasing purpose altogether. When the heart is fractured, purpose becomes the thread that holds the rest together. The smile, or the lack of it, becomes a mirror reflecting this shift. It is no longer a spontaneous reaction to possibility, but a considered response to reality. It appears when something genuinely breaks through the numbness, an unexpected success, a moment of shared humor, a rare sense of being understood. These moments are fewer, but they are more honest. They are not performed, they are earned. Behind the scenes, there is likely a quiet negotiation taking place within him. Between the man who wants to retreat into work completely and the man who knows that doing so would only deepen the emptiness. Between the instinct to armor up and the longing to be open again. This internal tension does not resolve cleanly. It ebbs and flows, shaping his moods, his decisions, his expressions. What the public rarely sees is how much energy it takes to appear composed when something inside remains unresolved. The discipline required to lead, to decide, to inspire, while carrying private grief. The emotional labor of showing up again and again when part of you would rather disappear into silence. That discipline is not weakness, it is endurance. There are lessons heartbreak teaches that no success ever will. It teaches humility in a way failure cannot. It teaches empathy in a way theory never could. It teaches that control is an illusion, and that some of the most important outcomes in life depend on timing, presence, and vulnerability rather than intellect. These lessons leave marks, but they also leave depth. The absence of the smile may also signal a reevaluation of what matters. When you lose something irreplaceable, the hierarchy of importance shifts. Achievements still matter, but they no longer promise completion. Recognition still arrives, but it no longer fills the same space. The heart begins to ask different questions, quieter ones. Who is here when the noise fades? What remains when the workday ends? What kind of life is being built alongside the future of humanity? These questions do not demand immediate answers. They linger, shaping choices subtly. Perhaps they influence moments when he chooses to slow down, even briefly. Or moments when he allows himself to feel something he once would have brushed aside. Or moments when he acknowledges, even privately, that brilliance does not exempt anyone from loss. The world may continue to search his face for signs of recovery, of collapse, of change. But healing is rarely photogenic. It does not announce itself in press releases or public appearances. It happens in fragments, in small internal shifts that accumulate over time. One honest conversation. One boundary respected. One night of rest that is not interrupted by urgency. The smile will not return as a symbol of triumph. If it returns, it will be quieter, steadier, less eager to impress. It will belong to someone who knows the cost of caring and chooses to care anyway. Someone who understands that being broken did not disqualify him from meaning, but reshaped his relationship with it. Until that moment, the absence remains meaningful. It is a testament to depth, to sensitivity, to the reality that even those who shape the future are shaped by their past. Elon Musk's heart being broken does not diminish his story, it adds a chapter that is invisible to metrics but essential to understanding the man behind them. In the end, what remains is not the image the world debates, but the quiet truth that lives beyond commentary. A man can change industries, bend history, and still be undone by something as simple and as powerful as love lost or connection fractured. That truth does not diminish greatness, it humanizes it. It reminds us that behind every monumental achievement is a heart that beats with the same vulnerabilities as any other. The smile being gone is not an ending. It is a pause in the story, a space where something is being reformed beneath the surface. Not repaired to its original state, but reshaped into something stronger in a different way. Broken hearts do not simply heal, they integrate. They become part of the structure, influencing how future joy is felt. How future risks are taken, how future love is offered. There is a quiet dignity in continuing forward without pretending everything is fine. in allowing the absence to exist without rushing to fill it. That restraint speaks of maturity, of lessons learned the hard way. It suggests that whatever was lost mattered enough to leave an imprint, and that imprint is being honored rather than erased. Perhaps one day, far from cameras and headlines, there will be a moment of genuine ease. A conversation that does not feel transactional. A presence that does not demand explanation. A sense of being met rather than managed. In that moment, the smile may return naturally, without effort or calculation. Not because the past has been forgotten, but because it has finally been understood. Until then, the journey continues. Not just toward Mars or technological futures, but inward, toward balance, toward acceptance, toward a version of strength that includes softness. The world may never fully see that journey, and that is as it should be. Some transformations are meant to happen quietly, protected from spectacle. Elon Musk's heart being broken is not a scandal, not a weakness, not a failure. It is evidence of depth in a life often reduced to extremes. Evidence that even those who aim for the stars remain grounded by very human truths. And in that reality, there is something profoundly relatable. Something that transcends fame and fortune. The smile may be gone for now, but the capacity for meaning remains. The ability to care, to build, to hope, though changed, still exists. And that, more than any expression captured in a photograph, is what ensures the story is not over, only evolving, shaped by both ambition and the quiet, enduring work of the heart.